The morning sun rose over Umediki village, turning the dusty paths gold as roosters crowed. Women swept their yards, and farmers prepared for another long day in the fields. But among all the familiar sounds of village life, one figure always drew the same stares, whispers, and cruel laughter. Adabi Okeke. At 25, Adabi was taller, stronger, and more muscular than most women in the village. Her broad shoulders, powerful arms, and rough hands did not come from a gym. They came from years of farming, carrying firewood, fetching water, and doing the heavy work no one else wanted to do. Her skin glowed under the morning sun. Her eyes were bright and intelligent, and her smile could soften even the hardest day. But no one cared about her smile. They only saw her strength, and in Umedike, that made her different. Everywhere she went, people reminded her that she was not the kind of woman men were supposed to desire. They mocked her body. They laughed at her work. They said she was too strong, too tall, too hard, too much. But Adabi had no time to break down over their insults. Her widowed mother needed food. The cassava had to be harvested. Water had to be fetched. Life did not pause just because people were cruel. That morning, as Adabi stepped out of the small mud house she shared with her mother, she balanced 2 large baskets on her shoulders like they weighed nothing. Her mother watched from the doorway, worry softening her tired face. "My daughter," she called gently, "don't overwork yourself today." Adabi smiled. "You tell me that every morning, Mama, because every morning you ignore me." Adabi laughed, but there was quiet pain behind it. "If I don't work, who will?" Then she picked up 2 heavy water containers and started toward the stream. Halfway down the muddy road, she saw 3 young men struggling to push a cart loaded with bags of maize. They pushed, cursed, and sweated, but the wheels would not move. Adabi stopped. The men looked at her and laughed, already preparing their insults. But before the morning was work, who will? Then she picked up 2 heavy water containers and started toward the stream. Halfway down the muddy road, she saw 3 young men struggling to push a cart loaded with bags of maize. They pushed, cursed, and sweated, but the wheels would not move. Adabi stopped. The men looked at her and over. The entire village would be reminded why mocking Adabi Okeke was always easier than matching her strength. "It won't move. Push harder. We're trying." Adabi set her containers down. "Do you need help?" One of the young men frowned. "We're fine." Another muttered under his breath, "We don't need a woman helping us." Adabi nodded politely. "As you wish." She turned to continue walking. Suddenly, the cart tipped sideways, spilling several heavy bags into the mud. The young men groaned in frustration. Adabi quietly walked back without saying another word. She bent down, lifted one of the enormous bags onto her shoulder with ease. Then another, and another. The young men stared in disbelief. Each bag weighed nearly as much as a full grown man. Within minutes, she had restacked the entire cart by herself. Then, she placed both hands on the wooden frame and pushed. The wheels rolled effortlessly out of the mud. "There," she said with a warm smile. "You should be able to manage now." The men didn't thank her. Instead, they exchanged embarrassed glances. One of them forced a laugh. "I told you she isn't a real woman." Another added loudly so everyone nearby could hear, "Who would marry a wife stronger than her husband?" Several villagers burst into laughter. Ada pretended not to hear. She picked up her water containers and continued toward the stream. Behind her, the laughter continued. It wasn't new. She had lived with it for years. At the stream, women washing clothes whispered among themselves, "Did you see what she did? She lifted those bags like they were pillows." No respectable man wants a wife who can throw him across the room. I heard one man propose to her last year and he disappeared after watching her split firewood. The women laughed loudly. Adabi quietly filled her containers with water. Every word pierced her heart. She wanted to tell them she wasn't trying to scare anyone. She wasn't competing with men. She was simply helping whenever she could. But no matter what she did, people always saw her muscles before they saw her heart. She lifted the 2 full containers and carried them home. An old man walking by shook his head. "What a waste." Another asked, "What do you mean?" If she had been born a man, she would have been the strongest farmer in the village. The 2 men laughed. Adabi kept walking. Her eyes remained fixed on the dusty road. She refused to let them see the tears gathering in her eyes. By afternoon, she was working alone on the family farm. The sun burned overhead as she harvested cassava faster than anyone else in Umedike ever could. She dug, pulled, carried, and stacked the harvest without resting. A group of children stopped near the farm. One little boy pointed excitedly. "Look, it's Iron Woman." The others laughed. "Carry the tree, too." "You should wrestle an elephant." "My father says you're stronger than 10 men." The children meant no harm. To them, it was a game, but every joke reminded Ada that she was different. She smiled at them anyway. "Go home before your mother start looking for you." The children ran away laughing. Late that afternoon, the village square became crowded. The elders had gathered beneath the ancient Irako tree while young men practiced traditional wrestling for an upcoming festival. Adabi walked through the square carrying a bundle of freshly cut firewood. One wrestler chick puffed out his chest when he saw her. He was known as the strongest young man in the village. His friends began teasing him. "There goes your competition. I think she's stronger than you." Chick frowned. "Nonsense," another friend shouted. "Adabi, come and wrestle Chick." The crowd immediately became interested. People surrounded them. Some clapped. Others laughed before anything had even happened. Adabi shook her head. "I didn't come here to wrestle anyone." "Oh, she's afraid," someone shouted. The crowd laughed. Chick grinned proudly. "See, she knows better." Just then, one of the elders struggled to move a massive wooden log that had fallen across part of the square. Several men tried lifting it. It refused to move. Without thinking, Adabe placed her firewood on the ground. "Allow me," she crouched, wrapped both arms around the thick log, and slowly lifted it. Gasps spread through the crowd. The enormous log rose from the ground. She carried it several meters away and gently dropped it beside the road. Silence. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then came the whispers. "Did you see that? Impossible. No woman should be that strong." Instead of applauding her, people began laughing nervously. Some looked frightened, others looked embarrassed. Chick turned away without saying another word. That evening, Adabi returned home exhausted. Mom and Goy had already prepared a simple meal of yam porridge. The older woman noticed her daughter's silence. "They laughed again, didn't they?" Ada forced a smile. "I'm used to it." "No." Mom and Goy shook her head sadly. "No one ever gets used to being rejected." Adabi sat quietly. For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, she asked the question that had lived inside her heart for years. "Mama, yes, is there something wrong with me?" Mama Goy immediately reached across the table and held her daughter's hand. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Then why does everyone treat me like I'm some kind of monster?" "You are not a monster. They say no man will ever marry me." "They're wrong. They laugh whenever I help people. They laugh because your strength reminds them of their own weaknesses." Adabi lowered her eyes. "I never wanted to make anyone feel small. I know. I just wanted to help." Mama and Goy smiled sadly. "My daughter, God gave every person a gift. Some people sing. Some people teach. Some people heal the sick. Yours happens to be strength, but everyone hates it. They don't hate your strength. What do they hate? They fear what they don't understand." Those words settled deep inside Adib's heart. Later that night, she sat alone outside beneath the stars. The village had grown quiet. Only the sound of crickets filled the cool night air. She watched families laughing inside their homes. She watched young couples walking together beneath the moonlight. Sometimes she wondered what it felt like to have someone look at her with admiration instead of amusement. To be loved instead of judged. To be seen for who she truly was. A gentle breeze brushed against her face. She looked toward the distant lights beyond the hills. The city. People often said life there was different. Nobody cared where you came from. People respected hard work. Dreams were possible. Adabi had dismissed those stories for years because she could never leave her mother behind, but now another thought entered her mind. What if she didn't belong here anymore? The next morning brought another painful reminder. A wealthy farmer visited Mangoy. He had come with what appeared to be good intentions. "My nephew is looking for a wife," he explained. Mama Go's face brightened. "Really?" The man nodded. "He is hardworking and responsible." Adabi smiled politely. Then the man asked one question. "Is it true your daughter carried 6 bags of cement by herself last week?" Mama and Goy hesitated. She helped some builders. The farmer slowly stood. "I think perhaps my nephew would prefer someone a little less intimidating." He hurried away before anyone could respond. Adabi watched him leave. She didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, something inside her quietly changed. She looked around the village she had called home all her life. The same roads, the same laughter, the same judgment, the same people who had decided long ago that because she was different, she would never belong. That afternoon, she helped her mother finish the farm work before sitting beside her beneath the shade of a mango tree. "Mama," she said softly. Her mother looked at her. "I think it's time." "Time for what?" "I want to leave you, Miike." Mangoy stared at her daughter in silence. "The city." Ada nodded. "I cannot spend the rest of my life apologizing for who I am." Tears filled Mama and Go's eyes. "I knew this day would come. I'm afraid." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," her mother replied. "It's moving forward despite it." Ada leaned against her mother's shoulder. "I'll work hard." "I know. I'll send money home." "I know. I'll make you proud." Mama and Goy smiled through her tears. "My daughter, you've made me proud every single day of your life." That night, Adabi packed the few belongings she owned into a small traveling bag. A few clothes, pair of worn sandals, a family photograph, and the dreams she had hidden in her heart for years. Standing outside the small house before dawn, she looked one last time at the village that had never truly accepted her. Instead of anger, she felt determination. She whispered to herself, "One day they will understand that my strength was never my curse. It was always my greatest gift." With that promise burning in her heart, Adabi stepped onto the dusty road leading toward the city, unaware that destiny was already preparing a life far greater than anything she had ever imagined. The bus pulled into the city just as the morning sun climbed above the skyline. Adabi pressed her forehead against the dusty window, her eyes widening as she took in the towering buildings, endless streams of vehicles and crowds of people hurrying in every direction. It was unlike anything she had ever seen in Umedike village. The noise alone was overwhelming. Car horns blared without stopping. Motorcycle riders squeezed between cars. Street vendors shouted the names of their goods. Huge billboards covered the sides of tall buildings, advertising everything from luxury apartments to sports gear. For a moment, fear crept into Adib's heart. She tightened her grip on the small traveling bag resting on her lap. "What if I made a mistake?" she whispered to herself. The conductor shouted, "Last bus stop, everybody come down." Adabi stepped onto the busy roadside. People brushed past her without even looking at her. No one laughed. No one stared. Felt strange. In the village, everyone always had something to say about her. Here, she was simply another face in the crowd. She smiled to herself. Maybe this city really could become home. Finding a place to stay proved harder than she had imagined. The little money she had saved from years of farming barely covered a week in the cheapest neighborhood. She eventually found a tiny single-room apartment tucked behind a row of mechanic workshops. The roof leaked whenever it rained, the walls were cracked, and the shared bathroom served nearly 20 tenants. Still, it was hers. The elderly landlord, Papa Musa, handed her a rusty key. "It isn't much," he admitted. Adabi looked around the tiny room. "It is more than enough. You don't mind the noise from the mechanics?" She smiled. "I grew up waking to roosters and goats. I think I'll survive." Papa Musa chuckled. "I like your spirit." After arranging her few belongings, Adabi sat on the thin mattress spread across the floor. The room felt empty. She pulled out the family photograph she had packed. It showed her and Mama Goy standing proudly in front of their little farm. She gently traced her mother's face with her finger. "I'll make this worth it, Mama," she whispered. The following morning, Adabi began searching for work. She walked for hours beneath the scorching sun. Everywhere she went, the answer was the same. "We're not hiring. Leave your number. We'll call you." But nobody called. One restaurant manager looked at her muscular arms and frowned. "We need waitresses who look softer." Another shop owner laughed openly. "You should be working on a construction site." By sunset, Adib's feet ached. She bought the cheapest bread she could find and returned to her room exhausted. For the first time since leaving home, doubt entered her heart. What if the village was right? No, she quickly shook away the thought. "I'm not giving up." The next few weeks became a test of endurance. She washed dishes at a roadside restaurant for 2 days before the owner hired a relative to replace her. She carried bags of rice at a local market. She helped builders move cement blocks. She unloaded trucks delivering furniture. Every job lasted only a few days. Whenever employers discovered how strong she was, they gave her the heaviest work, but rarely paid her fairly. One evening, after spending 12 hours unloading bags of cement, the contractor handed her only half the promised payment. "This isn't what we agreed." The man shrugged. "Take it or leave it. You promised double. You talk too much." Ada looked at the money. She needed it desperately. Without another word, she accepted it and walked away. She refused to fight. Her dignity meant more than revenge. One afternoon, while delivering cartons for a small grocery shop, Adabi noticed a modern fitness center across the street. Large glass windows revealed people exercising inside. Some struggled to lift weights that looked surprisingly light to her. A banner outside read, "Fit Life Elite Fitness Center, Assistant Trainer Needed." Adabi stopped walking. She read the sign again. A slow smile spread across her face. "I've never worked in a gym." She looked down at her muscular arms. "But maybe this is where I belong." Without giving herself time to become nervous, she crossed the road. The receptionist looked surprised as Ada entered. "Can I help you? I came about the assistant trainer position." The receptionist glanced at Adabi from head to toe. "Do you have any certifications?" "No." "Any experience working in a gym?" "No," she sighed politely. "I'm sorry, I don't think." A deep voice interrupted. "Who's asking about the job?" A tall, middle-aged man wearing sportswear approached. He was the gym owner, Mr. Kletchy Johnson. He had built one of the most respected fitness centers in the city. Adabi greeted him respectfully. "I would like to apply." Mr. Johnson folded his arms. "You've worked as a trainer before." "No." "So why should I hire you?" Adabi answered honestly. "I've spent my whole life lifting heavy things." Several gym members nearby left. Mr. Johnson smiled politely. "I appreciate your confidence, but this isn't farming. I know you need technique. I'm willing to learn." Mr. Johnson looked unconvinced. He pointed toward the largest barbell in the gym. "See that?" Adabi nodded. "It weighs 180 kilograms. She simply listened. "No one has successfully lifted it this week." Adabi walked toward it. Several members stopped exercising. One whispered, "She's going to embarrass herself." Another chuckled. "This should be interesting." Ada crouched before the barbell. She remembered lifting soaked logs after heavy rains. She remembered carrying sacks of cassava twice her size. She remembered years of hard work under the hot village sun. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the bar. Then she lifted. The massive weight rose smoothly from the floor. Gasps echoed throughout the gym. Adabi held it for several seconds before lowering it carefully. Silence filled the room. One man removed his headphones. Another dropped his water bottle. The receptionist covered her mouth. Mr. Johnson blinked several times. He walked around the barbell as if expecting to discover some trick. "You made that look easy." Adabi scratched her head shilly. It felt lighter than carrying wet firewood. The gym exploded with laughter, not mocking laughter. Admiring laughter. Mr. Johnson smiled broadly. "When can you start?" Adabe's eyes widened. "You mean I got the job?" "You got the job?" The first few weeks were difficult. Adabi quickly discovered that strength alone was not enough. Mr. Johnson personally taught her proper exercise techniques. She learned about muscle groups, nutrition, body mechanics, injury prevention, and client motivation. Every evening, she stayed after work reading fitness books. She watched instructional videos late into the night using free internet at a nearby cafe. She practiced every exercise herself before teaching anyone else. Whenever she made mistakes, she asked questions instead of pretending to know everything. Her humility impressed everyone. Soon, clients began requesting her specifically, not because she was the strongest coach, but because she genuinely cared. One morning, an elderly woman entered the gym. "I've never exercised before," she admitted nervously. "I'm afraid people will laugh at me." Adabi smiled kindly. "I know exactly how that feels." The woman looked surprised. "You do more than you can imagine." Instead of giving complicated instructions, Ada patiently guided her through simple stretches. She celebrated every tiny improvement. Within weeks, the woman felt healthier than she had in years. She told all her friends. More clients arrived, then more. Soon, young athletes wanted Adabi strength training. Office workers wanted weight loss programs. Busy mothers wanted fitness advice. Teenagers admired her discipline. Everyone left inspired. One afternoon, a young man stormed into the gym. "I've been coming here for months and still can't lift half my body weight." He threw his towel onto the floor. "I'm quitting." Ada picked up the towel. She handed it back to him. "Can I tell you a story?" The young man. "Fine. I spent years believing my strength was something to be ashamed of." He frowned. "Really? People laughed at me every day." "What changed?" "I stopped trying to become the person everyone else wanted." She looked him in the eyes. "I became the person I was created to be." The young man remained silent. "You don't become stronger overnight." She smiled. "You become stronger every day. You refuse to quit." The man nodded slowly. "I'll stay." Months later, he lost over 30 kilograms. Whenever reporters asked him what changed his life, he always gave the same answer. "Coach Adabi refused to let me give up." Word about the remarkable village woman spread across the city. Fitness bloggers began mentioning her. Clients posted videos online showing her lifting incredible weights while encouraging beginners. One particular video changed everything. During a community charity event, several volunteers struggled to lift a collapsed steel beam, trapping a delivery motorcycle. Without hesitation, Adabi stepped forward, working together with emergency responders. She helped raise the beam long enough for the rider to escape safely. Someone recorded the moment. Within 24 hours, the video had millions of views. Comments flooded every social media platform. "She's incredible. Real-life superhero. Strength with kindness. That's rare. Where can I train with her?" The next week, the gym was packed from morning until night. People traveled across the city just to meet the famous coach, Adabi. Mr. Johnson laughed as he studied the growing waiting list. "You've become more popular than the gym itself." Adabi blushed. "I don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal." He smiled. "Because you're different." She lowered her eyes. "I've heard that my whole life." "This time," Mr. Johnson replied gently, "it's a compliment." Those words stayed with her. For years, being different had been a source of pain. Now, for the first time, it had become her greatest strength. That evening, after finishing her final training session, Adabi locked up the gym and stood outside, watching the city lights shimmer against the darkening sky. She took out her phone and called her mother. Mama and Goy answered immediately. "My daughter, how are you?" Ada smiled. "I'm happy, Mama. I can hear it in your voice. I finally found a place where no one laughs because I'm strong." Her mother's eyes filled with tears on the other end of the call. "I told you God gave you that gift for a reason. You were right. Are people treating you well?" "They respect me and your work. I love every minute of it." Mama and Goy laughed joyfully. "I knew one day the world would see what I have always seen." Ada looked up at the glowing skyline. For the first time in many years, she no longer felt like an outsider. She had built a new life with her own hands. She had found people who valued her heart as much as her strength. Little did she know that fate was quietly preparing an even greater challenge, one that would bring a wounded police officer into her life and change her destiny forever. 3 months had passed since Adabi joined FitLife Elite Fitness Center. The frightened village girl, who had arrived in the city carrying nothing but a small traveling bag, had slowly transformed into one of the most respected fitness coaches in the area. Every morning before sunrise, she unlocked the gym, cleaned the equipment, arranged the weights, and prepared training schedules for her clients. She treated every person who walked through the doors with patience and kindness. Whether they were wealthy business executives or students struggling to pay for monthly memberships, people admired her incredible strength, but what kept them coming back was her gentle heart. "Good morning, Coach Adabi." Several members greeted as they entered. She smiled warmly. "Good morning, everyone. Ready to work today?" The group laughed. "Only if you promise not to make us regret it." "I make no promises," she teased. The room filled with cheerful laughter. It was hard to believe this was the same woman who had once been mocked simply for being different. Here people respected her. Here people believed in her. That Friday was especially busy. The gym was preparing for a charity fitness competition the following weekend, and nearly every treadmill, bench, and weight station was occupied. Ada moved from one client to another, correcting postures and encouraging those who wanted to quip. "You've got 3 more repetitions." She encouraged a middle-aged banker struggling to lift dumbbells. "I can't." You said that 5 minutes ago, he laughed through his exhaustion. And somehow you convinced me to continue. You'll thank me tomorrow. No, he replied dramatically. I'll probably hate you tomorrow. Everyone nearby burst into laughter. Across the room, a teenage girl named Esther hesitated in front of a heavy medicine ball. I don't think I can lift it. Adabi walked over. Why not? It's too heavy. Adabi knelt beside her. Do you know what I learned growing up? Esther shook her head. The hardest weight to lift isn't on the floor. She gently tapped the girl's forehead. It's the doubt inside here. Esther smiled. Together they counted. 1, 2, 3. The girl lifted the medicine ball for the first time. The entire gym applauded. Esther's face lit up with pride. Moments like that reminded Ada why she loved her work. She wasn't just helping people build stronger bodies. She was helping them believe in themselves. By evening, the gym had finally emptied. Mr. Johnson stretched tiredly behind the reception desk. Long day, Adabi wiped sweat from her forehead. The longest. You've earned tomorrow morning off. She blinked. I have. You haven't taken a break in weeks. I'll be fine. He shook his head firmly. That's not a request. She laughed. Yes, sir. As she packed her belongings, Mr. Johnson looked at her thoughtfully. You've changed this place. I've only done my job. No. He smiled. You've reminded people that fitness isn't about showing off. It's about becoming stronger than yesterday. Ada smiled modestly. Thank you. Go home and get some rest. I will. She waved goodbye and stepped outside. The cool evening breeze was refreshing after spending hours inside the gym. Streetlights flickered on one after another, illuminating the busy sidewalks. People hurried home after work, while roadside food vendors served steaming bowls of pepper soup and roasted corn. Adabi decided to walk instead of taking a bus. She enjoyed the peaceful evening walks. They reminded her of the quiet roads in Umedike, even if the city never truly slept. As she walked through a quieter neighborhood, her phone rang. It was Mama and my daughter. Mama, I was just thinking about you. Have you eaten? Ada laughed. You always ask that first because if I don't, you forget. I'll eat when I get home. You've been working too hard. I'm happy. That makes me happy too. Mama and paused. You sound tired a little. Remember, even the strongest tree needs rain. Ada smiled. I know. After chatting for several more minutes, they ended the call. Adabi slipped the phone into her bag and continued walking. The streets gradually became quieter. Most shops had already closed. A light drizzle began to fall. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself. Then a loud gunshot shattered the silence. Bang! Adabi froze. Another shot echoed through the street. Bang! People screamed. Someone shouted, "Run!" Within seconds, panic spread everywhere. Pedestrians abandoned shopping bags and sprinted away. Market stalls closed instantly. Motorcycles sped off. Car tires screeched against the wet road. Adabi looked toward the sound. An alley. Dark, narrow, dangerous. Her heart pounded. Every instinct told her to run with everyone else. Instead, she heard a painful groan. Someone was hurt. Without thinking twice, she ran toward the alley. The narrow passage was dimly lit by a flickering street lamp. Rainwater flowed through the gutters. A black SUV sped away from the opposite end of the alley. Adib caught only a brief glimpse of masked men inside before the vehicle disappeared into traffic. She hurried forward. About 20 men ahead lay a man dressed in a police tactical uniform. Blood spread beneath him. His service pistol rested a few feet away. He struggled to breathe. Adabi immediately knelt beside him. "Can you hear me?" The officer opened his eyes slightly. They were filled with pain. He coughed violently. "Phone." His voice was barely audible. Adabi gently examined him. One bullet had struck his shoulder. Another had entered just below his ribs. Blood soaked his uniform. She looked around desperately. There has to be someone. But the street was empty. Everyone had fled. She grabbed her phone and dialed the emergency number. The operator answered immediately. "Emergency services. I found a police officer who's been shot. What is your location?" Adabi quickly explained. "We're dispatching an ambulance." "How long?" "Traffic is heavy." She glanced at the officer. His breathing had become weaker. "It may take 15 to 20 minutes. Adabi's heart sank. She looked at the amount of blood on the ground. He didn't have 20 minutes. The officer weakly reached toward her. "Don't." His words faded. His eyes slowly closed. No. Adabi gently slapped his shoulder. Stay with me. There was no response. She checked his pulse. It was still there, but it was growing weaker. She looked toward the road. No ambulance, no police vehicles, nothing. Her mind raced the nearest hospital. She remembered passing one while coming from work. It was about 2 kilometers away, too far for most people carrying an injured man, not for her. She made her decision instantly. I'm getting you there myself, carefully. She removed her jacket and pressed it firmly against his wound to slow the bleeding. Then she bent down. Using all the proper lifting techniques she had learned from years of manual labor and fitness coaching, she carefully lifted the unconscious officer across her shoulders in a secure fireman's carry. To Adabi, the weight was manageable. To everyone else, it would have been impossible. She stood, adjusted her balance, then she ran. The rain became heavier. Cars splashed muddy water onto the roadside. People stared in disbelief as the muscular young woman sprinted down the street carrying a fully grown police officer across her shoulders. A taxi driver slowed down. What happened? He's been shot. I'll help. Your car can't get through this traffic. Without stopping, Adabi continued running. Her muscles burned. Her breathing became heavier, but she refused to slow down. Stay alive, she whispered repeatedly. You don't know me, but you're going to survive. Traffic had completely blocked the main road. Drivers leaned on their horns impatiently. Adabi quickly changed direction, taking smaller side streets she had memorized during her daily walks home. Her shoes splashed through puddles. Rain soaked both of them completely. The officer remained unconscious. Every few seconds, she adjusted the pressure of her jacket against his wound. She silently prayed, God, please don't let him die. Several pedestrians pulled out their phones, recording the incredible sight. One young man shouted, "Someone clear the road." Others stepped aside immediately. A delivery cyclist rode ahead, yelling, "Emergency! Make way!" Traffic slowly opened. People who had no idea what was happening simply moved because they saw the determination on Adabi's face. Nothing could stop her. Finally, the glowing emergency sign of St. Catherine's Hospital appeared ahead. Adabi nearly cried with relief. She burst through the hospital entrance. Help! Doctors and nurses immediately rushed toward her. Gunshot victim. Prepare the emergency room. Get a stretcher. Adabi carefully lowered the officer onto the waiting stretcher. Medical staff surrounded him instantly. One doctor looked at her in amazement. Did you carry him here? Yes. From where? She gave the location. The doctor stared at her. You carried him over 2 kilometers? She simply nodded. There wasn't time to wait. The medical team rushed the officer through the emergency doors. One nurse remained behind. Ma'am, we need some information. I don't know him. You don't? I only found him. The nurse looked surprised. You still carried him all this way? Ada nodded. He needed help. The nurse smiled. The world needs more people like you. Several minutes later, another nurse approached. The surgery has started. Will he survive? We're doing everything we can. Adabi sank into one of the waiting room chairs. Only then did she notice her hands trembling. Her clothes were soaked with rain and blood. She bowed her head for the first time that night. She cried not because she was afraid of blood, not because she regretted helping. She cried because she realized how close death had come. She whispered a prayer for the stranger whose name she still didn't know. Nearly 2 hours passed. Finally, a surgeon emerged. The operation was successful. Adabi stood immediately. He's alive. The doctor smiled. Yes. Relief flooded her face. The bullets narrowly missed several vital organs. He paused. Had he arrived even 5 minutes later? The doctor shook his head. We would have lost him. Adabi closed her eyes. She silently thanked God. The doctor looked at her with admiration. You're the one who brought him. Yes, you saved his life. Adabi lowered her head. The doctor saved him. No. The surgeon smiled warmly. We only finished what you started. A hospital cashier approached carrying a clipboard. The emergency deposit hasn't been paid yet. Adabi looked toward the operating room. Without hesitation, she reached into her bag. The money inside represented almost everything she had managed to save over the past 3 months. Money she had planned to send to her mother. Money for next month's rent. Without counting it, she handed it over. This should cover part of it. The cashier looked surprised. Are you a relative? No, a friend. She shook her head. I don't even know his name. The cashier stared at her speechlessly before accepting the payment. Satisfied that the officer was now safe, Adabi quietly stood. No reporters, no photographs, no speeches. She simply slipped out of the hospital into the now peaceful night. The rain had stopped. She began the long walk back to her tiny apartment. Behind her, the hospital staff watched through the glass doors. One nurse smiled. She didn't even wait for a thank you. The doctor folded his arms. Some people don't help because they're looking for recognition. He looked toward the dark street where Adabi had disappeared. They help because that's who they are. As Ada walked beneath the city lights, she had no idea that the unconscious man whose life she had saved was not an ordinary police officer. Nor did she know that by sunrise, one of the richest and most powerful families in the entire city would begin searching for the mysterious young woman who had carried their son through the rain and refused to let him die. Adabi woke before dawn the morning after saving the wounded police officer. Her body ached more than it had in months. The muscles in her shoulders were stiff from carrying a fully grown man through the rain for over 2 kilometers. Her legs felt heavy, and her palms were bruised from gripping the unconscious officer tightly so he would not slip. She stretched slowly before sitting on the edge of her bed. For a few moments, she simply stared at her sore hands. Images from the previous night replayed in her mind. The gunshots, the blood, the masked men speeding away in the black SUV, and the doctor's words. Had he arrived 5 minutes later, we would have lost him. Adabi closed her eyes and whispered a short prayer. Thank you, Lord, for saving his life. She had no idea who the officer was or whether he would fully recover. She only hoped he would wake up to see another sunrise. Her small phone vibrated on the wooden table. It was a message from her mother. Good morning, my daughter. I prayed for you today. May God continue to guide your steps. I love you. Ada smiled. She typed back quickly. I love you too, Mama. Have a beautiful day. She considered telling her mother about the previous night's incident, but decided against it. Mama and would only worry. After taking a quick bath, Adabi put on her navy blue tracksuit, tied her hair into a ponytail, grabbed her gym bag, and headed for work. She expected the day to be completely ordinary. She couldn't have been more wrong. FitLife Elite Fitness Center was already buzzing when she arrived. The receptionist, Cynthia, looked up from her desk and smiled. Morning, Coach Adabi. Morning. You look tired. Adabi laughed softly. I didn't sleep very well. I can see that. Mr. Johnson emerged from his office carrying a clipboard. There you are. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Ready for another busy day? She nodded. Always. Within minutes, the gym was filled with members. Music echoed through the workout area. Weights clanged against metal racks. People laughed between sets. Adabi moved from one client to another, correcting their form and offering encouragement. Excellent posture. Keep your back straight. 3 more reps. You can do it. She loved mornings like this. The energy inside the gym always reminded her that people could become stronger if they refused to give up. By mid-morning, the gym was packed. Several new members had signed up after seeing videos of Ada online. One young woman approached nervously. Coach Adabi. Yes. I just wanted to thank you. Adabi looked surprised. For what? I watched your interview online. My interview? The one where people were talking about how you inspired them to exercise. Adabi smiled awkwardly. I didn't know anyone watched that. They did. The young woman hesitated. I've always been embarrassed about my body. Adabi listened quietly, but seeing someone as confident as you gave me courage. Adabi gently squeezed her shoulder. You don't have to become someone else. She smiled warmly. Become the healthiest version of yourself. The woman nodded with grateful tears in her eyes. Mr. Johnson watched from across the room. He smiled proudly. She changes lives without even realizing it. Around 11, an unusual sound interrupted the gym. Car engines, not one, several. Everyone near the front windows turned toward the parking lot. One luxury SUV entered, then another, then another, then a long black limousine. Behind it came 2 gleaming Rolls-Royces. The convoy finally stopped outside the entrance. The entire parking lot seemed filled with expensive vehicles. Gym members exchanged confused glances. What's happening? Is a politician coming? Maybe it's a celebrity. Even Mr. Johnson looked puzzled. I wasn't expecting anyone. Several men in black suits stepped out first. They wore dark sunglasses despite the bright morning sun. Each looked alert, scanning the surroundings carefully. Then one of them opened the rear door of the limousine. An elderly man stepped out. He was dressed in an elegant charcoal suit that probably cost more than some people's yearly salary. Though his hair had turned gray, his posture remained strong. The moment he appeared, several gym members gasped. "Oh my goodness. Is that really him? It can't be." Mr. Johnson's eyes widened. Chief Richard Lawson. Even Adabi had heard the name. Chief Richard Lawson wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the richest businessmen in the entire country. His companies employed thousands of people. His charitable foundations built schools and hospitals. Newspapers regularly described him as one of the most influential men in Africa. Adabi frowned. What is someone like him doing here? The gym doors opened. The suited men entered first. The conversations inside immediately stopped. Every eye followed them. Then Chief Richard Lawson walked in. Despite his wealth and influence, there was no arrogance in his expression. Instead, he looked exhausted as though he had not slept all night. His eyes slowly scanned the room. Finally, he spoke. "Good morning." Nobody answered immediately. The silence felt almost sacred. "Mr. Johnson hurried forward. "Chief Lawson." The older man nodded politely. "I apologize for arriving without notice. It is an honor to have you here. I am looking for someone." Mr. Johnson smiled. "If there's anything we can help with," Chief Lawson interrupted gently. "The young woman who saved my son's life." The room became completely silent. Mr. Johnson blinked. "I'm sorry. My son was shot last night." Gasps spread across the gym. "He survived because a young woman carried him to St. Catherine's Hospital." Chief Lawson looked around once more. "The hospital staff told me she works at this gym." Adabi slowly stepped forward. "I was the one who brought him." Every head turned toward her. Chief Lawson looked at her carefully. For several long seconds he said nothing. Then, to everyone's complete surprise, the billionaire bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you." The gym fell into stunned silence. The richest man in the city was thanking a village girl. Adabi looked embarrassed. "Please don't thank me." He smiled sadly. "My daughter." She blinked. "If you had not been there," his voice cracked, "I would have buried my son today." Tears filled his eyes. The room grew quiet. Everyone could see that behind the billionaire was simply a worried father. Chief Lawson took a slow breath before continuing. "My son is Inspector Daniel Lawson." Several people gasped. The decorated police officer, the one who led those anti-kidnapping operations. Chief Lawson nodded. He was ambushed while returning from an investigation. Adabe's heart sank. "So, it wasn't a robbery?" "No." His face darkened. "Someone wanted him dead." Adabi remembered the black SUV disappearing into the night, the masked gunman, the fear in Daniel's fading eyes. She whispered softly, "I'm just glad I found him." Chief Lawson smiled. "The doctors told me what you did." He looked at everyone inside the gym. "This young woman carried my son over 2 kilometers while he bled." Several members stared at Adabi in amazement. The elderly businessman continued. "She even paid part of his hospital expenses." Adabi quickly lowered her head. "It wasn't much." Chief Lawson looked at her kindly. "It was everything you had." She didn't answer. She had never expected anyone to know. "The cashier told me." He reached into his suit pocket and removed an envelope. "This belongs to you." Adabi stepped backward. "No, you paid for my son. I didn't do it expecting repayment. You still deserve it." She shook her head. "I helped because someone needed help." Chief Lawson smiled. "I've spent my entire life surrounded by wealthy people." He paused. "But true character," he looked directly into Adabe's eyes, "cannot be bought." One of his assistants stepped forward carrying a polished wooden case. He opened it. Inside lay a check. Mr. Johnson's eyes nearly popped out. Several gym members leaned forward. Chief Lawson picked it up. "I would like to offer you a small token of appreciation." Adabi accepted the paper politely. Then her eyes widened. The amount written on the check was enough to buy a house. She immediately handed it back. "I'm sorry." Chief Lawson frowned. "Is something wrong? I can't accept this." The room erupted into whispers. "Did she just refuse that? That's millions. I would have accepted immediately." Chief Lawson himself looked surprised. "You saved my son's life." "I know. So why refuse?" Adabi smiled gently. My mother raised me to help people because it's the right thing to do. She looked around the gym. If I take money for doing what my conscience demanded, she shook her head. It won't feel right. The billionaire stared at her. For several moments he couldn't speak. Finally, he laughed quietly. I have offered donations to universities, churches, hospitals, and charities. He smiled warmly. You are the first person to reject my money. The gym filled with soft laughter. Ada blushed. I'm sorry. No. Chief Lawson smiled. Never apologize for having principles. Although Adabi refused the check, Chief Lawson wasn't ready to leave. If you won't accept money, he thought for a moment, then at least allow me to do something. She hesitated. I don't need anything. Mr. Johnson suddenly spoke. Actually, everyone looked toward him. Our gym has been hoping to expand. He looked embarrassed. We've simply lacked the funds. Chief Lawson smiled immediately. Done. Mr. Johnson blinked. Sir, I'll build you a new training wing. The gym owner stared speechlessly. No conditions, no publicity. Consider it my way of thanking the place that shaped the woman who saved my son. The gym erupted into applause. Adabi laughed. I suppose I can't stop you. No. Chief Lawson smiled. You cannot. Just then, several journalists arrived outside. News of the billionaire's visit had spread quickly. Cameras flashed continuously. Reporters hurried inside. Chief Lawson, who is the mysterious woman who rescued Inspector Daniel Lawson. Can we speak with her? Adabi immediately stepped behind Mr. Johnson. She hated attention. One reporter finally reached her. Ma'am, what inspired you to save him? She answered simply. He was injured. Did you know he was the son of a billionaire? No. Would you have helped if he had been a poor man? Adabi looked genuinely confused. Why would that matter? The reporter blinked. She continued. A person's life doesn't become more valuable because they're rich. Silence filled the room. Every camera remained fixed on her. She added quietly, if someone needs help, you help them. Her words quickly spread across television stations and social media. Within hours, millions of people were watching the interview. People admired not only her strength, but also her humility. Comments poured in from across the country. This is the kind of hero we should celebrate. Strength with compassion. Protect this woman at all costs. She deserves every blessing coming her way. Before leaving, Chief Lawson walked over to Adabi once more. My son is awake. Relief flooded her face. He is? Yes, he doesn't remember much. Chief Lawson smiled, but he remembers one thing. What? He keeps asking. The older man chuckled softly about the strong angel who carried him through the rain. Adabi laughed, feeling her cheeks grow warm. I'm no angel, Chief Lawson smiled knowingly. Perhaps. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small card. My personal number. She looked surprised. If you ever need anything, he paused. Anything at all. My family owes you more than we can ever repay. Adabi accepted the card politely. Thank you. As the convoy slowly drove away, everyone inside the gym remained frozen. Finally, Cynthia broke the silence. She turned toward Adabi. You carried the richest man's son through the rain. Another trainer shook his head in amazement and came to work this morning like nothing happened. Mr. Johnson smiled proudly. I told all of you from the day she arrived. He looked at Adabi. Greatness isn't measured by how much weight someone can lift. He paused. It's measured by the size of their heart. Adabi looked out the window as the last luxury vehicle disappeared into the busy city traffic. She had no way of knowing that this encounter was only the beginning. Soon, the man whose life she had saved would walk through those gym doors himself, and the friendship that started with an act of courage would slowly grow into a love neither of them had ever expected. 3 weeks had passed since the shooting. Life at FitLife Elite Fitness Center had become busier than ever. Ever since the news of Adabi's heroic rescue spread across the country, new members signed up almost every day. Some came because they wanted to train with the famous fitness coach. Others came simply to meet the woman who had risked her own life to save a stranger. Despite all the attention, Adabi remained exactly the same. She still arrived before sunrise. She still swept the training floor before the cleaners arrived. She still greeted every member with the same warm smile. She still refused special treatment. To her, fame meant nothing. Helping people had always been enough. That Monday morning, She was helping an elderly man learn how to use a rowing machine when Cynthia, the receptionist, hurried toward her. "Coach Adabi." Adabi turned. "Yes, there's someone asking for you." She looked toward the entrance. Standing there was a tall man wearing a simple navy blue shirt, dark jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. His left arm was supported by a medical sling, and although he looked healthy, traces of the recent attack were still visible. Adabi stared for a few seconds before recognizing him. The police officer, the man she had carried through the rain. He removed his cap and smiled. "So this is where my guardian angel works." Adabi laughed softly. "I told your father I'm not an angel." "No," he smiled warmly. "You're much stronger." She walked toward him. "You should still be resting. My doctor says I need to walk more and lifting weights." He chuckled. "I think I'll leave that part to you." The two of them laughed together. For the first time, Adabi noticed how kind his eyes were. There was no pride in them, no arrogance, just gratitude. He extended his hand. "I'm Inspector Daniel Lawson." She shook it gently. "I'm Adib. I know. My father hasn't stopped talking about you." She smiled awkwardly. "He exaggerates." "I don't think he does." Daniel looked around the gym. "I came to thank you properly." "You already did." "No," he shook his head. "You saved my life." His voice became serious. "I don't remember much about that night." He paused. "But every doctor tells me the same thing. If you hadn't carried me to the hospital," he smiled faintly, "I wouldn't be standing here." Ada looked down. "I'm just glad you're alive." "So am I." Daniel insisted on paying for a gym membership, despite Mr. Johnson offering him one for free. "If everyone else pays," Daniel said, "then so should I." Mr. Johnson laughed. "I like you already." Over the following weeks, Daniel became one of Adabe's regular clients. At first, their conversations were brief and professional. "Keep your shoulders back. Like this." "Exactly. Don't rush the movement. I've been told police officers are impatient." Daniel laughed. "Who told you that?" "I'm discovering it myself." Little by little, the conversations grew longer. Daniel would often arrive early just to chat before training. Sometimes he stayed after everyone had gone home. They talked about almost everything: their childhoods, their dreams, their families, their fears. One evening, Daniel sat on a workout bench while catching his breath. "You know," he said, "you're different from what I expected." Adabi looked up from arranging dumbbells. "What were you expecting?" "My father described someone who carried me through the rain." She laughed. "That sounds accurate. I imagined someone intimidating, and instead I found someone who smiles too much." Adabi folded her arms. "Is that a complaint?" "Not at all. It's refreshing." She smiled. "I thought rich people were supposed to be serious." Daniel burst into laughter. "Trust me, not all of us." One afternoon after a training session, Daniel noticed Adabi eating a simple lunch of rice and vegetables in the staff room. "That's all you're having?" She nodded. "It's enough. You work 1, 2-hour days. I'm used to it." He frowned. "I know a restaurant nearby." She smiled politely. "I can't afford expensive restaurants." Daniel shook his head. "I wasn't asking you to pay. I don't like people spending money on me, then think of it as repayment." "You've already thanked me." He leaned forward with a playful grin. "I saved enough money by not dying." Ada couldn't help laughing. "That's a terrible joke." "It made you laugh." "It did." So she pretended to think for several seconds. "Fine, but only this once." Daniel smiled triumphantly. "I'll take it." The restaurant wasn't luxurious despite Daniel's wealth. Instead, he chose a small, family-owned place that served traditional meals. Adabi noticed. "I thought the richest man's son would eat somewhere fancier." Daniel shrugged. "The owner here has known me since I was a teenager." The elderly woman running the restaurant smiled when she saw him. "Daniel." She hugged him carefully, avoiding his injured shoulder. "It's been too long. I've been busy." She looked at Adabi. "And who is this beautiful young woman?" Daniel smiled. "This is Adabi." The woman gasped. "The young lady who saved your life." Adabi looked embarrassed. The woman immediately hugged her too. "My daughter, may God bless you." Adabi's cheeks turned red. The old woman insisted on bringing extra food to their table. Throughout lunch, Daniel realized something surprising. Adabi treated everyone exactly the same. The restaurant owner, the waiter, the little boy selling bottled water outside. She spoke to everyone with respect. Money never seemed to influence how she viewed people. Daniel admired that. Their friendship continued to grow. Sometimes Daniel visited the gym even on days he wasn't training. "I had paperwork nearby," he would say. Mr. Johnson eventually laughed. "You've had paperwork nearby 4 days this week." Daniel scratched his head. "Coincidence?" "No." The gym owner smiled knowingly. "You came to see Adabi." Daniel said nothing. His silence was answer enough. One Saturday morning, Adabi received a surprise invitation. Daniel had organized a charity event where police officers and fitness instructors would teach self-defense classes to young women. "I was hoping you'd help. I'd love to." The event attracted hundreds of participants throughout the day. Daniel watched Adabi interact with everyone. She patiently encouraged nervous girls. She helped elderly women learn simple safety techniques. She stayed long after the event officially ended because one little girl wanted extra practice. The girl's mother approached Daniel. "Your friend is remarkable." Daniel smiled proudly. "I know you look at her differently." Daniel looked away. "Do I?" The woman laughed. "It's obvious." Daniel didn't answer, but deep inside, he knew she was right. That evening, Daniel drove Adabi home. His luxury SUV stopped outside her modest apartment building. He looked around quietly. "You live here?" Adabi nodded. "It's small." He frowned. "The neighborhood isn't very safe." "I've managed. You deserve better." She smiled gently. "I grew up in a mud house." She looked toward her apartment. "This already feels like a palace." Daniel's heart tightened. He admired her contentment. Many people chased luxury. Ada appreciated whatever she had. Before she stepped out of the car, Daniel spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really refuse my father's money?" She thought for a moment. "My mother taught me that kindness loses its beauty the moment you put a price on it." Daniel remained silent. She continued. "If I had walked away from that alley because the man lying there wasn't rich," she looked at him, "then I wouldn't deserve to call myself a good person." Daniel smiled softly. "I've met powerful people all my life." He paused. "But I've never met anyone like you." Adabi looked away shilly. "Good night, Daniel." "Good night, Adabi." As she disappeared into the building, Daniel remained in his car for several minutes. He couldn't stop smiling. Meanwhile, inside the enormous Lawson mansion, another man wasn't smiling at all. Victor Lawson sat in his private office watching a television interview featuring Ada. The reporter replayed footage of Chief Richard Lawson thanking her at the gym. Victor's expression darkened. "So, this is the famous village girl?" His personal assistant nodded. Victor scoffed. "Fades." The assistant hesitated. "There's another problem." "What?" "Inspector Daniel has been visiting her regularly." Victor leaned back slowly. "Interesting. It appears they're becoming close." Victor's fingers tapped against the wooden desk. He had spent years trying to understand why his father favored Daniel. Now Daniel had become even more admired. A decorated police officer, a national hero for surviving an assassination attempt, and now linked to the courageous young woman everyone was celebrating. Victor clenched his jaw. Everything always seemed to work in Daniel's favor. He hated it. A few days later, Daniel invited Adabi to accompany him to visit a children's orphanage supported by the Lawson Foundation. "I usually visit every month." "You never told me. I don't like announcing charity." Adabi smiled. "I understand." The children screamed with excitement when Daniel arrived. "Officer Daniel." He laughed as several little boys hugged him. Adabi watched with surprise. "They adore you. I've known most of them for years." One little girl approached Adabi cautiously. "Are you really stronger than Officer Daniel?" Daniel laughed loudly. "I promise you she is." The little girl giggled. "Can you lift him?" Adabi's eyes widened. "What?" The children began chanting. "Lift him. Lift him." Daniel folded his arms dramatically. "I guess we have no choice." Before Adabi could protest, he stood perfectly still. She sighed. "You asked for this." With one smooth motion, she wrapped an arm around his waist and effortlessly lifted him off the ground. The orphanage exploded with laughter and applause. Daniel threw his hands into the air. "I officially surrender." The children laughed so hard that some fell onto the grass. After she gently set him down, Daniel smiled at her. "I've never been happier to lose." Their eyes met for a brief moment. Neither of them looked away. Something had changed. Neither could explain it, but both felt it. Weeks turned into months. The shooting wounds healed. Daniel no longer needed his sling, yet he kept finding reasons to visit the gym. Sometimes he helped Adabi organize charity fitness events. Sometimes they walked through the city after work. Sometimes they simply sat on a park bench talking until the sun disappeared below the skyline. One evening, while watching the sunset from a quiet riverside walkway, Daniel finally spoke the words that had been growing inside his heart. "You know," Adabi looked at him. "What?" "The night you found me," he smiled softly. "I thought my life was ending." She remained silent. "I never imagined," he turned to face her fully, "that it would actually be the night my happiest chapter began." Adabi felt her heart beat faster. Daniel took a slow breath. "I came to thank the woman who saved my life." He smiled warmly. But somewhere along the way, his eyes met hers. "I fell in love with her." Adabi's eyes widened. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. She had spent years believing no man would ever truly see her beyond her muscles. Yet here sat a man who admired not just her strength, but her kindness, her courage, her humility, and her heart. Tears filled her eyes. Daniel looked worried. "I'm sorry if I've made things awkward." She gently shook her head. "No." A smile slowly spread across her face. "You haven't." She reached for his hand. "I think." She laughed softly through happy tears. "I started falling in love with you a long time ago, too." Daniel's face lit up with joy. He carefully intertwined his fingers with hers. As the last rays of sunlight reflected across the river, they sat together in peaceful silence, unaware that someone was already watching from a parked car across the street. Behind the tinted windows, Victor Lawson lowered a pair of binoculars. His expression was cold. "So," he muttered to himself, "it really has begun." A dangerous smile slowly appeared on his face. "If my brother thinks this love story is going to have a happy ending," he started his engine. "He has no idea who he's dealing with." The morning after Daniel confessed his love to Adabi felt different. For the first time in years, Adabi woke up smiling before her alarm clock rang. She lay on her small bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the previous evening. Daniel's shy smile, his trembling voice, the way he had looked into her eyes when he admitted he had fallen in love with her. Even now, her heart beat faster whenever she remembered it. She laughed softly to herself. "So, this is what love feels like." Her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. "Good morning, strong lady. I hope you slept well. Don't work too hard today. I'll stop by the gym after work." Daniel Adabi smiled so widely that her cheeks hurt. She quickly replied, "Good morning, officer. I'll be waiting and don't skip breakfast, Adabi." Less than a minute later, another message arrived. "Yes, coach. I promise to obey orders." She laughed out loud for a woman who had spent most of her life believing no man would ever truly love her. Every message from Daniel felt like a miracle. She got dressed, offered a short prayer, and left for work, with a lightness in her step she had never known before. Across the city, however, another morning began very differently. Inside the luxurious Lawson mansion, Victor Lawson stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his private office overlooking the estate. A newspaper lay open on his desk. The front page headline read, "Hero Fitness Coach Continues Charity Work with Inspector Daniel Lawson." Beneath the headline was a large photograph of Daniel and Ada smiling together during the self-defense program they had organized for young women. Victor crushed the newspaper in his hand. His jaw tightened. Everywhere he looked, it was Daniel. Daniel, the brave police officer. Daniel, the hero. Daniel, the beloved son. Now Daniel had also found love. Victor slammed his fist against the desk. The expensive crystal paperweight toppled onto the carpet. A knock came at the office door. "Come in." His personal assistant, Felix, entered carefully. "You asked to see me, sir?" Victor nodded. "Close the door." Felix obeyed. Victor pointed toward the newspaper. "Have you seen this?" "Yes, sir." "What are people saying?" Felix hesitated. "They admire both of them." Victor's eyes narrowed. "And my father. He seems very happy." Victor let out a bitter laugh. "Of course he is." He poured himself a glass of expensive whiskey, even though it was barely 9 inches the morning. "My father has always adored Daniel." He stared at the amber liquid. "When we were children, Daniel could do no wrong." Felix remained silent. Victor continued, speaking more to himself than anyone else. "I worked harder. I earned better grades. I learned the family business. He drank the whiskey in one gulp. But Daniel, his expression darkened, only had to smile. Victor's hatred had begun many years earlier. His mother had married Chief Richard Lawson after the death of Daniel's mother. Although Chief Lawson treated both boys fairly, Victor never believed it. He convinced himself that Daniel was the favorite. Every compliment Daniel received felt like an insult to him. Every achievement Daniel celebrated became another reason for jealousy. When Daniel chose to become a police officer instead of joining the family business, Victor secretly celebrated. Finally, he had thought the company will be mine. But instead of fading into the background, Daniel became one of the city's most respected officers. His courage made headlines. His honesty earned him public admiration. Even their father proudly displayed newspaper articles about Daniel's achievements. Victor hated every one of them. Now Adabi had entered Daniel's life. Another reason for people to praise him. Another person who looked at Daniel with admiration. Victor couldn't stand it. That afternoon, Chief Richard Lawson invited both sons to lunch at the family mansion. Daniel arrived first. He greeted the household staff warmly. "Good afternoon, everyone." The cook smiled. "Welcome home, sir." Even the gardeners waved happily. Daniel knew everyone's name. He often stopped to ask about their families. It was one of the reasons the staff loved him. A few minutes later, Victor entered. Without greeting anyone, he walked straight into the dining room. Lunch was already prepared. Chief Lawson smiled as both sons took their seats. "It's good to have both of you here." Daniel smiled. "I've missed your cooking." The housekeeper laughed proudly. Victor remained silent. As they ate, Chief Lawson turned toward Daniel. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. The doctors cleared you for full duty." Daniel nodded. "They have." His father looked relieved. "I thank God every day." Daniel smiled. "So do I." Chief Lawson hesitated before speaking again. "I've been meaning to ask." Daniel looked up. "How are things with the Deeb?" Daniel couldn't hide his smile. "They're wonderful." Chief Lawson chuckled. "I thought so." Victor gripped his fork tightly. His father continued. "She's an extraordinary young woman." "I know. I'd like to invite her to dinner one evening." Daniel's smile widened. "I think she'd like that." Victor suddenly pushed his chair back. "I'm finished." Neither man looked at him. Chief Lawson was too busy talking to Daniel. Victor walked away feeling invisible. The jealousy burning inside him grew even stronger. Meanwhile, Adabi's life continued as normal. She never imagined someone she had never truly met was already beginning to hate her. That afternoon, she was helping a group of teenagers through a strength training session when Daniel walked into the gym carrying a bouquet of yellow roses. Every trainer stopped what they were doing. Cynthia smiled knowingly. "I had a feeling he'd come today." Daniel approached Adabi. "I heard yellow roses represent friendship." She laughed, and I was hoping these could represent friendship. He smiled. "While I work toward earning the red ones," Adabi laughed so hard she nearly dropped her clipboard. "You planned that speech, didn't you?" "I may have practiced." Mr. Johnson walked past them. "I've heard better." Everyone laughed. Adabi accepted the flowers. "They're beautiful." Daniel looked relieved. "I wasn't sure if you'd like them." "I've never received flowers before." His smile faded. "Never." She shook her head. "No one has ever bought me flowers." Daniel silently made himself another promise. There would never be another year of her life without flowers. Over the following weeks, their relationship became stronger. Daniel often picked Adabi up after work. Sometimes they visited Mom and Goy in the village. The first time Daniel met her, he insisted on helping carry bags of harvested cassava from the farm. Mama and Goy laughed. "So, the famous police officer isn't afraid of hard work." Daniel smiled. "I learned from the strongest woman I know." He looked toward Adabi. She rolled her eyes playfully. "He's trying to impress you. It's working." Mangoy replied with a grin. The entire afternoon was filled with laughter. For the first time in years, Adabi saw genuine happiness in her mother's eyes. Later that evening, after Daniel drove back to the city, Mom and Goy gently touched her daughter's hand. "He loves you." Adabi smiled shilly. "I think so too." "And you love him?" She nodded. "I do." Mom and Goy looked toward the stars. "God has answered my prayers." Not everyone shared their happiness. Victor had quietly begun investigating Adabi. One evening, Felix entered Victor's office carrying a file. "I found everything." Victor opened it. Inside were photographs of Adabi's village, Information about her childhood, her mother's address, her old school records. Victor smirked. So he flipped through the pages. The famous hero grew up in poverty. Felix nodded. Yes, sir. Victor leaned back. Perfect. What do you intend to do? Victor smiled coldly. Nothing. Felix looked confused. Not yet. He closed the file. People destroy themselves more effectively when you simply give them opportunities. What do you mean? Victor stood. I'm going to let this relationship grow. He looked out the window toward the city skyline. The higher people climb, his smile became darker. The harder they fall. Several days later, Adabi received an invitation to dinner at the Lawson mansion. She almost refused. I don't belong in places like that. Daniel laughed. My father invited you. I don't know which fork to use. You don't need to. What if I embarrass myself? You won't. She looked nervous. I've never even entered a mansion. Daniel gently held her hands. My father isn't inviting your clothes. She looked at him. He's inviting your heart. Those words calmed her. Still, she spent nearly an hour deciding what to wear. She finally chose a simple cream-colored dress. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy, just elegant enough to show respect. The Lawson mansion was more magnificent than anything Adabi had ever imagined. Marble floors reflected the sparkling chandeliers. Beautiful gardens surrounded the estate. Luxury cars lined the driveway. She suddenly felt very small. Daniel noticed her hesitation. Nervous a little. You don't need to be. Chief Richard Lawson personally welcomed her at the entrance. My dear Adabi, he smiled warmly. Welcome to our home. He hugged her like family. Thank you for inviting me. The pleasure is ours. Dinner was filled with easy conversation. Chief Lawson asked about her childhood, her work, her dreams. He listened with genuine interest. You've built an inspiring life. Ada smiled. I've simply been blessed. Halfway through dinner, Victor finally arrived. He had deliberately come late. Chief Lawson frowned. You're late. I was busy. His eyes immediately settled on Adabi, so he smiled politely. You're the famous Adabi. She stood respectfully. It's nice to meet you. Victor shook her hand. His smile looked friendly. His eyes did not. I've heard so much about you. I hope only good things. Oh, Victor chuckled. Nothing but praise. Daniel noticed the strange look that briefly crossed Victor's face. It lasted only a second, but something about it unsettled him. Throughout dinner, Victor remained charming. He complimented Adabe's charity work, asked about her fitness programs, even joked with Daniel. To everyone else, he appeared perfectly pleasant. But behind every smile, he was studying them, watching, calculating, learning exactly how much they cared for each other. When dinner ended, Victor watched from an upstairs balcony as Daniel walked Adabi to her car. They laughed together beneath the garden lights. Daniel gently kissed her forehead before she got into the vehicle. Victor's smile disappeared instantly. He tightened his grip on the balcony railing. So, he whispered, my brother really is in love. He turned away and returned to his office. Opening a locked drawer, he removed another file. This one was marked with a single word, Daniel. Inside were photographs, financial records, maps, phone numbers, and newspaper clippings about the shooting that had nearly claimed Daniel's life. Victor slowly placed a Adabi photograph inside the file, then he closed it. This time, he murmured, his voice cold and emotionless. I'll make sure nothing stands between me and everything that should have been mine. Far below, Daniel drove Adabi home, completely unaware that the greatest threat to their happiness had never truly disappeared. It had simply been waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. Nearly 2 months passed after Adabi's first dinner at the Lawson mansion. Life seemed almost perfect. Daniel had returned fully to active police duty, though Chief Richard Lawson constantly reminded him not to take unnecessary risks. Adabi's fitness career continued to flourish, and the new training wing that Chief Lawson had funded was almost complete. Every weekend, Daniel and Adabi organized free fitness classes for women and children, and their story had become an inspiration throughout the city. People often joked that the strongest couple in the city had finally found each other. For Ada, life had never been brighter. She had a career she loved, a mother who was healthy, friends who respected her, and a man who loved her exactly as she was. She often caught herself smiling for no reason, but while happiness filled her days, danger was quietly gathering in the shadows. Inside the headquarters of the city's Criminal Investigation Department, Detective Superintendent Ibrahim Bello stood before a whiteboard covered with photographs from the night Daniel Lawson had been ambushed. Pictures of the crime scene, bullet casings, the abandoned alley, security camera stills, maps with red strings connecting different locations. For weeks, the investigation had gone nowhere. The gunman had disappeared without leaving any obvious clues. Detective Ibrahim rubbed his tired eyes. There has to be something we missed. His assistant, Sergeant Tund, entered carrying a thick file. "Sir, what is it?" "We finally received the forensic report from the abandoned SUV." Detective Ibrahim immediately opened the file. Most of the vehicle had been wiped clean. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing useful. Then he stopped on the last page. "What is this?" The sergeant leaned closer. "They found microscopic traces of industrial paint." "Paint?" "Yes." The report identified it as a rare protective coating, used by only a handful of automobile workshops in the city. Detective Ibrahim smiled for the first time in days. Now we're getting somewhere. The following morning, detectives visited each workshop listed in the report. The first 3 produced nothing. At the 4th workshop, an elderly mechanic studied the crime scene photograph. "I've seen this vehicle before." Detective Ibrahim leaned forward. "When about 3 weeks before the shooting." "Who brought it?" The mechanic frowned. "I don't know his name," he pointed toward the photograph. "But he wasn't one of the gunmen. Can you describe him?" "He wore expensive clothes." The mechanic thought for a moment, and he snapped his fingers. "He drove a silver luxury sedan." "Anything else?" "He paid cash." "Did he say why the SUV needed repairs?" The old mechanic nodded. "He claimed they wanted stronger suspension because the vehicle would carry heavy cargo." The detective wrote everything down. Although it wasn't enough to identify anyone, it was the first real lead they had found. Elsewhere in the city, Daniel was unaware of the new developments. He spent the afternoon helping Adabi organize equipment in the nearly completed expansion of the gym. "This place looks incredible," Adabi said, looking around the spacious new training hall. Mr. Johnson smiled proudly. "I still can't believe Chief Lawson paid for all of this." Daniel laughed. "My father has always believed gratitude should be shown through actions." Adabi shook her head. "I still wish he hadn't spent so much." Mr. Johnson chuckled. "You may be the only person in this city who complains when someone gives them something." Daniel smiled. "That's one of the reasons I love her." Adabi blushed. "You're making everyone look at us." "Good." She playfully nudged him. "You'll never stop teasing me, will you?" "Never." Their laughter echoed throughout the new gym. Neither of them noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Inside sat Victor Lawson. He lowered a pair of binoculars. His expression remained cold. "They look happy." Beside him sat Felix. "What are your instructions?" Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he continued watching Daniel and Ada laughing together. Finally, he spoke. "Happiness makes people careless." He started the engine. "Let them enjoy it while it lasts." Back at police headquarters, another breakthrough arrived. A special task force investigating organized crime arrested 3 armed robbers during an unrelated operation. One of the suspects refused to cooperate. The second claimed to know nothing. The third man broke. His name was Musa. After 12 hours of questioning, he requested to speak privately with Detective Ibrahim. The detective entered the interrogation room carrying a recorder. "You asked for me." Musa looked nervous. "I want a deal." "That depends on what you know." Musa swallowed hard. "I wasn't part of the shooting." Detective Ibrahim remained expressionless. "But I know who planned it." The detective leaned forward. "Talk." Musa hesitated. "I only drove the escape vehicle." The room fell silent. "You drove the black SUV?" Musa nodded slowly. "I never fired a weapon." "Who hired you?" "I don't know his real name." "What name did he use?" "Chairman." "Did you ever see his face?" "Only once." Musa closed his eyes, trying to remember. "He met us in an underground parking garage." "What did he look like?" "He wore sunglasses." The detective frowned. "It was night." "I know. He didn't want anyone recognizing him." "Anything unusual?" Musa nodded. "He had an expensive watch," the detective sighed. "That describes thousands of wealthy men." But Musa continued. "He also had a large scar on his left wrist." Detective Ibrahim immediately froze. "A scar? That detail could matter." "Anything else?" He wasn't like ordinary criminals. What do you mean? He spoke like an educated businessman. And the target? He specifically said, the police officer must die. The detective turned off the recorder. This was the biggest breakthrough yet. The following day, investigators reviewed surveillance footage from dozens of nearby buildings. Hours passed, then days. Finally, one analyst called everyone over. I think I found him. The grainy footage showed a luxury sedan entering the underground parking garage the night before the attack. The driver's face wasn't visible, but as he reached for the access card, his sleeve slid upward. A scar appeared briefly on his left wrist. Detective Ibrahim stared at the paused image. Enhance the license plate. The technician worked for several minutes. The numbers slowly became clearer. The detective immediately requested ownership records. 20 minutes later, the report arrived. Registered owner Lawson Holdings Executive Fleet. The room became silent. Detective Ibrahim looked at his team. There must be another explanation. Lawson Holdings owned hundreds of vehicles. Still, something didn't feel right. That evening, Detective Ibrahim requested a confidential meeting with Chief Richard Lawson. Inside the Billionaire's office, the detective carefully explained everything they had discovered. Chief Lawson listened quietly. When the detective mentioned one of the company's executive vehicles, the older man's face changed. Which executive? We're still verifying. Chief Lawson nodded. I appreciate your discretion. The detective hesitated. There is one more thing. Go ahead. The witness described the man as having a scar on his left wrist. Chief Lawson's expression froze. Without saying a word, he slowly looked down at his own hands. Neither wrist bore a scar. Then another face entered his mind. Victor. Years earlier, Victor had suffered a deep cut in a boating accident. The scar remained clearly visible. Chief Lawson immediately pushed the thought away. No. He stood abruptly. It can't be. The detective remained silent. I'm not accusing anyone. Chief Lawson nodded slowly. I understand. After the detective left, the billionaire sat alone in his office for nearly an hour. His hands trembled. No, he whispered. My own son couldn't. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Meanwhile, Daniel and Adabi spent the evening walking through a quiet park after work. The city lights reflected beautifully across the nearby lake. Daniel reached for her hand. I've been thinking, she smiled. That usually means trouble. He laughed. Not this time. I've been thinking about our future. Adabi looked at him. Our future? I know we've only been together a few months. He stopped walking. But I've never been more certain about anything. She felt her heart race. I'm listening. When this investigation is finally over, he smiled warmly. I'd like to ask your mother for permission to marry you. Adabi's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, I don't want to rush you. You aren't. He gently wiped a tear from her cheek. You deserve someone who chooses you every single day. Adabi smiled through her tears. And you deserve someone who believes in you. They embraced quietly beneath the trees. Neither noticed a man photographing them from a distance. The camera shutter clicked several times before disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, Victor received an unexpected visitor. Felix hurried into his office, looking unusually anxious. Sir. Victor looked up from his computer. What is it? The police have arrested one of the men connected to the shooting. Victor's expression remained calm. So he talked. Victor slowly stood. What exactly did he say? We don't know. But investigators have started reviewing company vehicle records. For the first time in years, Victor looked genuinely worried. He walked toward the window. His mind raced. He had been careful, very careful. Everything had gone through shell companies and intermediaries. No payments had come directly from him. No meetings had taken place in public. Still, loose ends had a way of destroying perfect plans. He turned toward Felix. Find Musa, the arrested driver. Victor nodded. I don't care what it costs. What do you want done? Victor's face hardened. I don't want him speaking ever again. Felix hesitated. Sir, that could attract attention. Victor slammed his hand onto the desk. I said, handle it. Felix lowered his head. Yes, sir. After the assistant left, Victor poured himself another drink. For the first time since arranging Daniel's assassination, fear crept into his heart. He looked toward the family photograph hanging on his office wall. It showed Chief Lawson standing proudly between his two sons many years earlier. Victor stared at Daniel's smiling face. His expression slowly twisted with bitterness. It should have been you. He whispered the words coldly. You should have died in that alley. At that exact moment, across the city, Detective Ibrahim received another call from the prison where Musa was being held. His face became serious. What do you mean someone tried to attack him? He grabbed his jacket and rushed toward the door. The investigation had entered a dangerous new phase. Someone was desperately trying to silence the only witness who could expose the truth behind Daniel Lawson's attempted murder. And with every passing hour, the evidence was pointing closer and closer to a suspect no one wanted to believe could be guilty. The attempted attack on Musa inside the prison changed everything. Detective Superintendent Ibrahim Bello stood outside the prison infirmary with his arms folded as doctors finished treating the terrified witness. Musa had survived only because a prison guard noticed another inmate trying to inject him with a poisonous substance disguised as medication. The attacker had refused to answer any questions. He simply repeated one sentence over and over. I was paid, nothing else. The detectives already knew what that meant. Someone outside the prison desperately wanted Musa silenced before he revealed everything he knew. Detective Ibrahim looked at Sergeant Tund. We don't have much time. What are you thinking, sir? If they tried once, they'll try again. So, what do we do? The detective looked through the small glass window at Musa, lying nervously on the hospital bed. We use him. Tund frowned. You mean as bait? Ibrahim nodded slowly. We let whoever hired those men believe Musa is ready to cooperate with us, and then we wait for them to make their next move. Later that afternoon, a carefully planned rumor began spreading through police channels. The information was deliberately leaked where the detectives hoped the conspirators would hear it. The story was simple. Musa had agreed to identify the man who hired the gunman. It wasn't true. Not yet. But the police hoped the news would flush out the mastermind. Only a handful of senior officers knew it was part of the plan. Even Daniel was kept out of the details. Detective Ibrahim wanted the operation to remain absolutely secret. Across the city, Felix burst into Victor Lawson's office without knocking. Victor looked up sharply. I told you never to enter without permission. I'm sorry, sir. Felix struggled to catch his breath. The police leaked information. Victor slowly stood. What kind of information? Musa has agreed to identify you. The room became deathly quiet. Victor's face lost its color. Impossible. That's what everyone's saying. Victor paced back and forth. No. He shook his head repeatedly. He's bluffing. But what if he isn't? Victor stopped walking. For several seconds he said nothing. Then a dangerous calm settled over him. If Musa talks, he looked directly at Felix. Everything ends. What do you want me to do? Victor walked toward the window. The witness must disappear before he reaches the courtroom. Felix swallowed nervously. The prison is heavily guarded now. Victor smiled coldly. Then we don't attack the prison. He turned around. We attack during the transfer. Meanwhile, life at FitLife Elite Fitness Center continued as usual. Adabi had no idea how close Daniel was to uncovering the truth. She spent the afternoon coaching a group of young athletes preparing for a national competition. Again, she encouraged, you can push harder. One teenage boy collapsed dramatically onto the training map. I think I'm dying. Ada laughed. If you're talking, you're not dying. The others burst into laughter. Just then, Daniel walked into the gym. He smiled as he watched Adabi motivating her students. Every time he saw her, he admired something new. Not her strength, not her beauty, her patience. She never shouted, never insulted anyone. She simply believed people could become better than they believed themselves. Mr. Johnson walked over. You've been standing there smiling for 5 minutes. Daniel laughed. Has it been that long? You look ridiculous. I know. And you don't care. Not even a little. Mr. Johnson patted him on the shoulder. Good. After work, Daniel and Adabi decided to walk through a nearby park. The evening breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. Children laughed as they chased one another across the grass. It was peaceful. For a while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. I've been distracted lately. Adabi looked at him. Is it work? He nodded. The investigation? Any progress? He hesitated a little. She squeezed his hand gently. You'll figure it out. I hope so. He looked at the ground. I keep wondering why someone wanted me dead. You've arrested dangerous people. I have, but this feels personal. Adabi remembered the fear in his eyes the night she found him. Who could hate this kind-hearted man enough to want him killed? She quietly prayed the truth would come soon. The following morning, Detective Ibrahim received the phone call he had been waiting for. One of the surveillance teams reported suspicious activity. Several disposable mobile phones had become active immediately after news about Musa's supposed confession spread. The phones communicated briefly, then went silent. The calls were traced to an abandoned warehouse district near the old industrial area. The detective immediately assembled a tactical team. Keep watching. No arrests yet. We need the person giving the orders. At the same time, Victor finalized his own plan. Inside an abandoned warehouse, he met with 4 armed criminals. None of them knew his real identity. He wore gloves, sunglasses, and a baseball cap. The prisoner will be moved tomorrow morning. One of the criminals asked, "What's our target?" "The transport vehicle." "Kill everyone?" Victor thought for a moment. "No." He smiled coldly. "Only Musa and the police? Avoid them unless necessary?" The gang leader nodded. "We'll get it done." Victor handed over a heavy duffel bag. Inside was cash, half the payment, the rest after the job. The men left. Victor remained behind. He looked around the empty warehouse. Then he carefully gathered every document and every electronic device he had stored there over the past several months. If the police ever searched this place, they would find nothing, or so he believed. Unfortunately for Victor, someone had been watching. Hidden nearly 200 meters away inside an unmarked surveillance van, Detective Ibrahim lowered a pair of high-powered binoculars. "There he is." Sergeant Tund looked through a camera lens. "We can't see his face." "No, but we have the vehicle and the license plate." The detective smiled. "We're getting closer." He quietly radioed another team. "Do not move. I repeat, do not move. We're following him." Victor drove away, unaware that plainclothes officers had begun tracking him from a distance. The detectives deliberately kept several vehicles between themselves and Victor's luxury sedan. They couldn't risk losing him, nor could they risk alerting him. Everything depended on patience. That evening, Chief Richard Lawson received another confidential visit from Detective Ibrahim. The older man listened carefully as the detective explained the surveillance operation. "You believe you've found the mastermind?" "We believe we're close." Chief Lawson looked relieved. "Daniel deserves answers." The detective hesitated. "There is something else. What is it?" "We're still investigating one possibility involving one of your company's executive vehicles." Chief Lawson closed his eyes briefly. He already knew what the detective wasn't saying aloud. Victor, the thought tore his heart apart. He desperately wanted the investigators to be wrong. Early the next morning, the operation began. A heavily armored police convoy left the prison. Inside, one of the vehicles sat. Nobody. The transport had been staged. Musa remained safely hidden inside a secure police facility. The convoy itself was baked. Several tactical units followed from a distance. Drones monitored the roads overhead. Detective Ibrahim sat inside an unmarked SUV, watching everything unfold. "Stay alert." The convoy approached an isolated industrial road. Suddenly, a truck sped across the intersection. Its driver deliberately blocked the road. Brakes screeched. At the exact same moment, 2 black SUVs burst from opposite directions. Masked gunmen jumped out, firing into the air. The officers inside the convoy immediately took defensive positions. "It begins," Detective Ibrahim whispered. Instead of joining the firefight, he watched carefully. His eyes searched for only one person, the one giving the orders, 300 meters away, hidden inside an abandoned warehouse overlooking the road. Victor watched through binoculars. He smiled. "This time," he whispered, "it ends." He reached for his phone to contact the gunman. He never got the chance. A calm voice suddenly spoke behind him. "I wouldn't make that call." Victor froze. Slowly, he turned around. Standing inside the warehouse were Detective Ibrahim, Sergeant Tund, and nearly 20 armed officers. Every weapon was aimed directly at him. Victor's eyes widened. "How?" The detective smiled faintly. "The convoy was never carrying Musa." Victor looked toward the road in horror. It was a trap. Exactly. For a split second, Victor considered surrendering. Then instinct took over. He spun toward a rear exit. "Stop!" Detective Ibrahim shouted. Victor ignored him. He sprinted out of the warehouse. Outside, Victor raced toward a waiting motorcycle hidden behind the building. He climbed onto it and sped away. Police vehicles immediately gave chase. Sirens echoed through the industrial district. Meanwhile, Daniel, who had been monitoring the convoy from another location, heard the emergency radio broadcast. Suspect fleeing north. His heart raced. What suspect? The dispatcher answered. Possible mastermind behind your shooting. Daniel's expression changed instantly. I'm on my way. He accelerated toward the industrial district. At the same time, Adabi was leading a morning fitness class inside the gym. Suddenly, the large television mounted on the wall switched to breaking news. Police chase underway in industrial district. She glanced briefly at the screen. Her stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. Moments later, her phone rang. It was Daniel. She answered immediately. Daniel, I'm okay. Her heart slowed slightly. But we found the man behind the shooting. What? I'll explain later. Be careful, I promise. Before she could reply, the call ended. Adabi stood frozen for several seconds. She whispered a prayer. Please keep him safe. The chase finally ended near an abandoned shipping yard. Victor abandoned the motorcycle and fled on foot between rows of rusty cargo containers. Daniel arrived moments later and joined the search teams. The officers spread out. Check every container. Don't let him escape. Victor's breathing became heavier. He knew the area well. If he reached the river beyond the shipping yard, he might still escape. He rounded one final container, then stopped abruptly. Standing directly in front of him, blocking the only exit, was Adabi. She had arrived after seeing the chase pass near the gym and followed at a safe distance, hoping only to make sure Daniel was unharmed. Victor recognized her instantly, so he sneered. The village girl. Adabi stood her ground. It's over, Victor. He laughed bitterly. You think you can stop me? She didn't answer. Instead, she planted her feet firmly. Victor charged forward, trying to shove her aside. He might as well have tried to move a concrete wall. Adabi barely moved. Victor stumbled backward in shock. He rushed again with all his strength. This time, Adabi grabbed both his wrists and held him effortlessly. No more running, she said calmly. Victor struggled wildly. Let me go. You tried to kill your own brother. You know nothing. Seconds later, Daniel and the tactical officers rounded the corner. They froze at the sight before them. Adabi calmly held Victor in place, despite his desperate attempts to break free. Detective Ibrahim stepped forward. Victor Lawson. He raised a pair of handcuffs. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and multiple related offenses. Victor looked from Daniel to Adabi, his face twisted with rage. Then, for the first time, he realized he had truly lost. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the empire of lies he had spent years building collapsed in a single moment. The truth could no longer be hidden. The sound of the handcuffs clicking around Victor Lawson's wrists echoed through the abandoned shipping yard. For a long moment, no one spoke. Victor stood between two police officers, his expensive suit covered in dust from his desperate attempt to escape. The confident businessman who had believed himself untouchable now looked like an ordinary criminal facing the consequences of his own choices. Daniel stared at his stepbrother in disbelief. He had suspected many dangerous criminals during his career as a police officer, but never Victor, never someone he had grown up with, never someone he had once called family. Victor slowly lifted his head and looked directly at Daniel. So, he said bitterly, you finally won. Daniel shook his head. This was never a competition. Victor laughed without humor. It has always been a competition. You imagine that. No. Victor's eyes burned with years of resentment. Father always loved you more. Daniel sighed deeply. You still believe that? I know it. Detective Ibrahim stepped forward. You can continue this conversation at police headquarters. Victor remained silent as officers escorted him toward the waiting police vehicle. Before entering, he glanced once at Adabi. If you had left my brother to die that night, he muttered quietly, none of this would have happened. Adabi met his gaze calmly. No, she replied. If you had chosen love over jealousy, she paused, none of this would have happened. Victor looked away. For the first time since his arrest, he had no answer. News of Victor Lawson's arrest spread across the city within hours. Television stations interrupted regular programming. Reporters gathered outside police headquarters. Newspaper headlines appeared online almost immediately. Business tycoon's son arrested in assassination plot. Inspector Daniel Lawson's stepbrother identified as alleged mastermind. The city was stunned. People struggled to believe the shocking story. At FitLife Elite Fitness Center, members crowded around the television mounted on the wall. Cynthia covered her mouth in disbelief. "I can't believe it." One trainer shook his head. "He planned his own brother's murder." "Mr. Johnson said, jealousy can destroy even the strongest families." Adabi quietly turned off the television. She had no interest in watching someone else's pain become entertainment. Instead, she walked into the new training hall and continued preparing equipment for the afternoon classes. She knew Daniel would need peace more than publicity. At police headquarters, Victor sat alone inside an interrogation room. Detective Ibrahim placed several files on the table: photographs, financial records, bank transfers, telephone records, surveillance images, everything collected over months of investigation. The detective calmly sat opposite him. "Would you like some water?" Victor ignored the question. "I want my lawyer." "You'll have one." The detective folded his hands. "But first..." He opened the first file. "Musa identified you." Victor remained expressionless. The detective opened another file. The abandoned warehouse was under surveillance. Another file. "The payment trail through the shell companies has been traced." Another. "The luxury sedan." Another. "The attempted murder of Musa." The stack of evidence continued growing. Finally, Detective Ibrahim slid one last photograph across the table. It showed Victor meeting with the hired criminals. Although his face was partially hidden, the distinctive scar on his wrist was clearly visible. The detective leaned back. "You planned everything carefully." Victor stared at the photograph, but not carefully enough. For nearly a minute, the room remained silent. Finally, Victor laughed. A tired, defeated, broken laugh. "I suppose it's over." The detective didn't answer. Victor slowly lowered his head. "I hired them." His confession came quietly. "I only wanted Daniel gone." "Why?" Victor closed his eyes. "I spent my whole life watching him receive everything. The respect, the admiration, our father's attention." His voice shook. "I convinced myself that if Daniel disappeared, everything would finally belong to me." Detective Ibrahim spoke gently. "Did it ever occur to you that your father loved both of you?" Victor remained silent. Tears slowly rolled down his face. For the first time in many years, he saw his own actions clearly, and he hated what he had become. That evening, Chief Richard Lawson sat alone inside his study. The confession lay on his desk. He had read it 5 times. Each reading hurt more than the last. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Daniel entered quietly. Neither man spoke for several moments. Finally, Chief Lawson broke the silence. "I failed him." Daniel immediately shook his head. "No, I should have seen the signs. You couldn't have known." The older man's voice cracked. "I raised 2 boys under one roof." He looked toward the family photograph hanging on the wall. "One chose to protect lives." He paused. "The other chose to destroy them." Daniel walked over and placed a comforting hand on his father's shoulder. "You're still my father." Chief Lawson looked at him with tears in his eyes. "I almost lost you." Daniel smiled gently. "But you didn't." The older man embraced his son tightly. Neither of them noticed tears running down both their faces. The following morning, Daniel visited Ada before work. She opened the apartment door and immediately noticed the sadness in his eyes. Without asking questions, she simply wrapped her arms around him. For nearly a minute, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel whispered, "I don't know how to feel." She gently held his hands. "You don't have to know. He was my brother." "I know. I keep asking myself if there was something I could have done differently." Adabi looked into his eyes. "You loved him." "Yes." "You respected him." "Yes." "You never wished him harm." Daniel nodded. "Then his choices were never your responsibility." He looked at her quietly. "You always know the right thing to say." She smiled softly. "No, I just remind people of what their hearts already know." Daniel smiled for the first time since the arrest. "I don't deserve you." She laughed. "I've told you before, we're not competing." A week later, Victor appeared in court. The courtroom was filled beyond capacity. Journalists, lawyers, business executives, police officers, ordinary citizens, everyone wanted to witness the trial. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Musa testified about the meetings. The mechanic identified the repaired SUV. Financial experts explained the hidden payments. Detective Ibrahim presented surveillance footage. Finally, Victor himself stood. The courtroom became completely silent. "I am guilty." Gasps spread throughout the room. His lawyer looked shocked. The judge adjusted his glasses. Victor continued, "I spent years blaming everyone else for my unhappiness." He looked toward Chief Lawson sitting quietly in the gallery. "But the truth is," he swallowed hard, "I destroyed my own life." He turned toward Daniel. "I'm sorry." The words sounded sincere. Daniel didn't respond. Some wounds needed time. The judge later sentenced Victor according to the law. As officers escorted him away, he never looked back. Outside the courthouse, reporters immediately surrounded Daniel and Chief Lawson. "Inspector Lawson, how do you feel after today's verdict?" Daniel answered calmly. "Justice was served." Another reporter asked, "Do you hate your stepbrother?" Daniel remained silent for a moment. Finally, he replied, "No, I hate the choices he made." But hate would only continue the cycle that brought us here. His answer appeared on television stations across the country. Many praised his maturity. Several days later, Chief Lawson visited FitLife Elite Fitness Center alone. Adabi was finishing a training session when Cynthia informed her, "Chief Lawson is here." Adabi quickly walked to the reception area. He looked older than she remembered. The recent events had clearly weighed heavily on him. "My dear Adabi," she smiled warmly. "It's good to see you." He shook his head. "I wish it were under happier circumstances." She invited him into Mr. Johnson's office. After sitting down, Chief Lawson remained quiet for several moments. Finally, he spoke. "I owe you an apology." Adabe looked surprised. "For what?" "I judged you." She frowned. "When?" "The first day we met." He smiled sadly. "I was grateful, but I also wondered whether someone from such a humble background would truly fit into our family." Adabe listened silently. "I was wrong." He looked directly at her. "You have brought more honor to the Lawson name than money ever could." Tears filled Adabi's eyes. Chief Lawson continued, "My wealth built companies." He smiled gently. "But your character rebuilt my faith in humanity." Adabi reached across the table and gently held his hand. "You don't need to apologize." "Yes," he nodded firmly. "I do," she smiled. "I forgave you before you even asked." Chief Lawson laughed softly through his tears. "No wonder Daniel loves you." News of Victor's conviction eventually reached Umediki village. The same villagers who had once mocked Adabi gathered beneath the old Irako tree, discussing the television reports. "Did you hear? That's Aradi Adabi, the fitness coach." "Yes, the woman who saved the billionaire's son." Another villager shook his head. "We laughed at her. We said no man would marry her. We called her Iron Woman." An elderly man lowered his head. "We were ashamed of what we didn't understand." Even Chick, the village wrestler who had once mocked Adabi publicly, felt embarrassed. "I owe her an apology." Within days, a group of villagers traveled to the city. When they arrived at the gym, Adabi was teaching a fitness class. She recognized them immediately. For a brief moment, old memories returned. The laughter, the whispers, the rejection. After class ended, the village elder stepped forward. "My daughter," his voice trembled, "we came to ask for your forgiveness." Everyone bowed their heads. Chick spoke next. "I was proud. I was insecure. I mocked your strength because it made me feel weak. I'm sorry." Another woman wiped tears from her eyes. "We should have celebrated you." Instead, she lowered her head. "We tried to make you feel ashamed." Ada looked at every familiar face. Years ago, she had dreamed of this moment. She had imagined anger. She had imagined revenge. Instead, she felt only peace. She smiled warmly. "I forgave all of you a long time ago." The villagers looked up in surprise. She continued, "If I had held on to bitterness." She looked around her beautiful gym. "I might never have become the person standing before you today." Tears flowed freely. One by one, the villagers embraced her. Even Chaik, Mr. Johnson, quietly watched from across the room. He smiled. "Now that's real strength." Later that evening, Daniel found Adea sitting alone outside the gym watching the sunset. "You seem peaceful." She smiled. "I am." The villagers came. She nodded. They apologized, and I forgave them. Daniel sat beside her. "You've forgiven everyone who's ever hurt you." Adabi looked toward the glowing sky. "Holding anger is like carrying unnecessary weight." She smiled playfully. I've spent my whole life learning when to put heavy things down. Daniel laughed. I think that's the wisest fitness advice anyone has ever given. As they watched the sun disappear beyond the city skyline, both of them felt that the darkest chapter of their lives had finally come to an end. Neither realized that an even brighter chapter, one filled with celebration, family, and new beginnings, was just about to begin. 6 months had passed since Victor Lawson's conviction. The city had slowly moved on from the shocking scandal that had dominated headlines for weeks. Newspapers had found new stories to chase. Television stations had turned their attention to other events, and life gradually settled into a peaceful rhythm once again. For Daniel Lawson and Adabi, however, those 6 months had brought something even more valuable than peace. They brought healing. Daniel threw himself into his work with renewed purpose. Having survived an attempt on his life, he appreciated every ordinary day more than ever before. Every morning he woke grateful to see another sunrise, to put on his police uniform, and to serve the city he loved. Adabi continued inspiring hundreds of people at FitLife Elite Fitness Center. The new training wing had become one of the busiest fitness facilities in the city, and her reputation as both a coach and motivational speaker continued to grow. But no matter how successful she became, she never forgot where she had come from. She still visited her mother every month. She still wore simple clothes. She still greeted the cleaners before greeting wealthy executives. Her heart remained exactly the same. That was one of the countless reasons Daniel loved her. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel drove toward Umadiki village, with an unusual mixture of excitement and nervousness. Chief Richard Lawson sat beside him in the passenger seat. In the back seat rested beautifully wrapped gifts, traditional drinks, baskets of fruit, pieces of fine fabric, and a small velvet box hidden carefully inside Daniel's jacket pocket. Chief Lawson noticed his son's silence. "You're nervous." Daniel smiled sheepishly. "Is it that obvious?" His father laughed. "You faced armed criminals without shaking." He looked at Daniel. "But asking one woman's mother for permission to marry her." He chuckled. "That's what's making you sweat." Daniel laughed. "I don't want to disappoint Mom, and you won't. I hope she believes I'll take good care of Adabi." Chief Lawson placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "She already knows." Meanwhile, Adabi had no idea what was happening. She believed Daniel was working overtime on a special police assignment. Instead, she spent the day helping her mother harvest vegetables behind their small house. Mama Ngoy smiled as she watched her daughter working happily. "I haven't seen you this cheerful in years." Adabi laughed. "Life has been good to me." "It has." Her mother looked at her thoughtfully. "And Daniel?" Adabi's smile grew wider. "What about him? When are you bringing him home again?" Adabi shrugged playfully. Soon, just then, the sound of several approaching vehicles echoed through the village. Villagers looked toward the dusty road. Luxury SUVs slowly entered Umadiki. Children immediately abandoned their games and ran after the convoy. "Big men are coming. Look at those cars. They're heading toward Mom and Go's house." Adabi looked up in confusion. Who could that be? The convoy stopped outside the small family compound. Daniel stepped out first, then Chief Richard Lawson. Several other respected elders followed, carrying gifts. Adabi's eyes widened. "Daniel." He smiled. Surprise. She looked from him to the gifts, then to her mother, then back again. "Mama, Mama." And Goy smiled knowingly. "I think our visitors have come for an important reason." Daniel walked toward Adabi. "I told you I had a special assignment." She folded her arms. "You lied." "I did, but only because I wanted this to be a surprise." Before Adabi could ask another question, Chief Lawson approached Mandoy respectfully. According to Igbo tradition, he greeted her warmly before speaking. "My sister," he began. "We have come with respect." Mama and Goy smiled. "You are welcome." Chief Lawson looked toward Daniel. "My son has found happiness." He then looked at Ada. "And that happiness is your daughter." The older woman listened quietly. "We have come today to ask for your blessing." Tears immediately filled Momgo's eyes. She looked toward Adabi, who was now standing speechless. Chief Lawson continued. "If she agrees." He smiled warmly. "We would be honored to welcome Adabi into our family." The small compound became completely silent. Mama Ngoy slowly turned toward her daughter. "My child," she whispered. "What does your heart say?" Adabi looked at Daniel. She remembered the first day she met him. The rainy night, the blood, the hospital, the friendship, the laughter, the healing, the love. She smiled through happy tears. My heart has belonged to him for a long time. Daniel's face lit up. He slowly reached into his jacket and removed the velvet box. Opening it carefully, he revealed a beautiful diamond ring. Then, in front of everyone, he knelt on one knee. Adabi. His voice trembled slightly. You saved my life. He smiled. But more importantly, you gave my life purpose. He took a deep breath. You taught me that true strength comes from kindness. You taught me forgiveness. You taught me courage. He looked into her eyes. I don't want to spend another day imagining a future without you. Adib, he asked softly. Will you marry me by now? Tears streamed freely down Adab's face. She laughed through her tears. You really had to kneel. Daniel grinned. My knees are already hurting. Everyone laughed. She gently helped him stand. Then she whispered the one word he had been praying to hear. Yes. Cheers erupted throughout the village. Children clapped excitedly. Women ululated joyfully. Mama and Goy hugged both of them tightly. Chief Lawson wiped tears from his own eyes. For the first time in many years, he felt his family becoming whole again. Preparations for the wedding quickly became the talk of the city. Newspapers called it the wedding everyone was waiting for. Social media overflowed with congratulatory messages. But despite the enormous public interest, Daniel and Adabi wanted something simple. We don't need 1,000 guests, Adabi insisted. Daniel smiled. I agree, Mr. Johnson laughed. You two are the only people I know trying to make a billionaire's wedding smaller. Chief Lawson raised both hands dramatically. I surrender. If simplicity makes you happy, he smiled. Then simplicity it shall be. The wedding day finally arrived. The church overflowed with guests. Police officers stood proudly in their dress uniforms. Fitness instructors filled several rows. Villagers from Umidike traveled together in hired buses. The same people who had once mocked Adabi now wore their finest clothes to celebrate her. Evenchik smiled proudly as he took his seat. I always knew she'd do great things. One elderly villager nudged him. That's not what you used to say. Chick laughed awkwardly. I've become wiser. Inside the bridal room, Ada stood before a mirror wearing a simple but elegant white gown. She hardly recognized herself. Cynthia adjusted the veil. You look beautiful. Adabi smiled nervously. I'm more nervous now than when I carried Daniel to the hospital. Everyone laughed. Mom and Goy gently held her daughter's hands. My child. Adabi looked up. When you were little. Her mother's voice trembled. I used to pray that one day someone would see beyond your muscles. She smiled through tears. God answered that prayer. Adabi embraced her tightly. Thank you for never making me feel ashamed. Mama and Goy kissed her forehead. I was always proud of you. At the altar, Daniel stood beside the pastor, trying unsuccessfully to hide his nervousness. One of his fellow officers whispered, Relax. Daniel shook his head. I faced armed robbers with less fear than this. The officer laughed. You're going to be fine. The church doors slowly opened. Everyone stood. Adabi entered on Chief Lawson's arm, as they had agreed together, symbolizing that she was now cherished as his own daughter. The entire church gasped. Daniel couldn't take his eyes off her. She looked radiant, not because of the expensive dress, not because of the decorations, but because happiness shone from her face. When she reached the altar, Chief Lawson gently placed her hand into Daniel's. He smiled warmly. Take care of each other. We will, Daniel promised. The ceremony began. They exchanged heartfelt vows. Daniel promised to honor, respect, and stand beside Adabi through every season of life. Adabi promised to love him with the same courage that had carried him through the rain on the night they first met. When the pastor finally declared, You may kiss your bride, applause filled the church. Daniel gently kissed Adabi. The moment felt like the beginning of an entirely new life. The reception overflowed with laughter. Instead of a formal first dance, the newlyweds surprised everyone. Daniel challenged Adabi to a friendly fitness contest. Push-ups? He asked confidently. She laughed. You're sure? I've been training. Guests gathered around cheering. Daniel managed 50 push-ups before collapsing dramatically onto the floor. I'm finished. Adabi continued effortlessly. The crowd erupted with laughter. Daniel raised both hands. I officially admit defeat. Adabi helped him to his feet. You'll never learn. I don't want to. He smiled. I married the strongest woman in the country. The guests applauded loudly. Later that evening, Mr. Johnson approached the couple. I have a wedding gift. He handed them a folder. Inside were legal documents. Adabi looked confused. What is this? Mr. Johnson smiled proudly. I've decided to retire next year. She looked shocked. I want you both to take over Fit Life Elite Fitness Center. Adabi's eyes widened. You trust us with all of this? I don't trust anyone more. She embraced him tightly. Thank you. Several months later, Adabi officially launched the Iron Hearts Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping girls and young women who had been bullied because they looked different or didn't fit society's expectations. The foundation offered free fitness classes, scholarships, confidence-building workshops, and mentorship programs. On opening day, hundreds of young girls attended. One shy teenage girl approached Adabi afterward. They call me too tall. Another whispered, they say I'm too skinny. A third lowered her head. They laugh because I'm stronger than the boys. Adabi smiled gently. She recognized the pain in their eyes because she had once carried it herself. She gathered them together. When I was your age, she began. People laughed at me too. The girls looked surprised. They said no one would ever love me. They said I wasn't feminine enough. They said my strength was a curse, Adabi said, standing before the girls who now looked at her with admiration instead of doubt. She smiled. They were wrong. The room grew quiet as every young woman listened. Never shrink yourself just to make other people comfortable, she continued. The things that make you different today may become the very things that change your life tomorrow. Applause filled the hall. At the back of the room, Daniel watched her with quiet pride. He had seen Adabi mocked, rejected, and underestimated by the same world she was now helping to change. When the celebration began, he stepped closer and gently slipped his hand into hers. I've arrested dangerous criminals, he whispered. I've faced bullets. I've survived things I thought would destroy me. He smiled and kissed her forehead. But marrying you will always be the greatest decision of my life. Adabi rested her head against his shoulder and looked around the hall. Girls were laughing, training, learning, and beginning to believe in themselves. In that moment, she understood the truth. The strength people once mocked had not only saved the man she loved, it had saved her too. Her journey had begun with rejection in a small village, but it ended with love, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that true strength is not measured by muscles alone. It is measured by the courage to remain kind, brave, and proud in a world that once tried to make you ashamed. If Adabi and Daniel's story touched your heart, hit that like button, share this video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Subscribe for more emotional stories about love, courage, self-worth, and powerful women who finally become everything they were meant to be.